and welcome to the program. I am Suren. Here is a good question. Who does not want to live long enough in order to be able to do the things that he or she desires to do in life? There are many nutritionists who suggest wonderful ways of keeping your muscles, your skin, your hair, your bones, and everything else beautifully healthy. But there are also those who practice psychiatry and psychology who also concern themselves with longevity of the human life, with a good mind. But what do we mean with a good mind? I will answer this with another question. What does a good mind mean to you? Good mind is the mind that thinks clearly and precisely. A good mind is the one that remembers everything clearly and precisely. A good mind is always positive about everything. A good mind never criticizes one's own self and is always kind to its own environment. A good mind accepts things as they are and tries to make the best of everything for the world, humanity, and its own body, own self. A good mind is always positive that good things can happen only to him or her and the world that it resides in. Okay, in a sentence, we are then talking about psychology. What does psychology think about longevity and how to achieve it? That's a very good question. What does psychology suggest to achieve longevity without becoming a vegetable? Psychology in regard to longevity refers to the duration or length of life, and it is not just about living for a long time, but also about living a meaningful and fulfilling life. Psychological factors like one's mindset, purpose, and social connections, for they indeed play a crucial role in influencing both lifespan and quality of life, even in mature age. Let's look at it in a more detailed way, shall we? 1. Longevity as a process. Beyond just breathing, just buying your groceries, and paying your bills. Longevity in psychology is more than just extending the number of years lived. It really is about the quality of those years, including physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Meaning of longevity and purpose. In fact, finding meaning and purpose in life, as emphasized by people like Viktor Frankl, and I say it is crucial and a fulfilling in long life. Let's talk about mindset. A longevity mindset. Unlike some who follow the olden traditional ways, accepting the norms of a society, but rather believing that longevity is attainable and normal, can positively impact behavior and health choices people make. 2. What are the psychological factors influencing longevity? social connections. We all know that strong social bonds and a sense of community are linked to better health and well-being, and which can contribute to a longer life. This sounds more optimistic, does it not? Optimism has been known to correlate with better physical health, suggesting a more stable link between psychological well-being and longevity. So, perhaps we need to consider thus purpose and goal-oriented behavior. Psychology is keenly interested in having a sense of purpose and engaging in meaningful activities, for they can help people maintain a healthy lifestyle and reduce stress. Coping mechanisms have been constantly debated. The reality is that developing healthy coping mechanisms for stress and adversity can protect against the negative impact of stress on physical health. This goes for everybody living on Earth. 3. Aging and longevity. We're talking about ageism. We discovered that negative perceptions and stereotypes about aging can have detrimental psychological effects on human beings, potentially impacting their life expectancy. Adapting to change, and could it be achieved? Another good question. Successful navigation of the challenges in regard to aging requires flexibility and adaptability, both physically and psychologically. Let us look at some aspects of continually learning and growing. We discover that engaging in lifelong learning and personal growth can help maintain a sense of purpose and well-being in later life. 4. Some researchers speak of the longevity paradox. I'll call it a puzzle. Maybe we could and should consider the quality of life. Even with great advancements in medical care today, simply living longer does not guarantee a better quality of life. It may help. Psychological factors are essential for experiencing joy and fulfillment. Meaning versus longevity. Focusing solely on extending lifespan can be at the expense of meaningful connections and a fulfilling life, potentially leading to a sense of existential emptiness. Per Bianca-Berg from University of Gothenburg says, there is no overarching theory of aging and longevity or a specific psychological theory targeting longevity as the main outcome. Survival into advanced age is determined by multiple influences of genes interacting with environmental conditions over the entire lifespan. Good point. Certainly, biological theories focus on evolutionary aspects and underlying mechanisms for life, and typically define longevity as the potential lifespan under ideal conditions. However, the interactions of psychological domains are expressed in our adaptation to everyday environmental demands and later life to age-related biological changes, which in turn produce differential conditions for survival. In respect, the psychology of longevity presents a non-deterministic approach in the crossroads of biological and social influences with a focus on biological constraints and social economic prerequisites for cognition, personality, and other effective components. The main manifestation of survival advantage becomes visible when an individual lives longer than the average person from the same birth cohort. Thus, longevity needs to be related to the actual life expectancy in a certain population. A substantial gap between the average lifespan and a long-lived person direct our attention to factors that may contribute to the observed differences. Early ideas about longevity were typically based on the assumption that genetic influences and age-related biological changes produced unavoidable neurological alterations and thereby changes in behavior. Later research gradually acknowledged that psychological characteristics and behavior are formed and expressed differently in various environmental contexts. Life course influences the coping strategies relative to environmental demands, and more general lifestyles are therefore currently being considered for their relevance to longevity. A general psychological stress model of aging provides a broad theoretical framework for the psychology of longevity. Although personality largely remains stable over the lifespan, certain changes have been linked to longevity. Higher neuroticism is associated with more negative emotions and lower capacity in regulating emotional stresses. And increased neuroticism within a person has been linked to physical health problems, as well as the increase in mortality. Another aspect of personality linked to mortality is extroversion. Even higher extroversion with decreased state of mortality. The link between extroversion and mortality is typically accompanied with greater social embeddedness. Our personality trends influence how we relate to others. Trust, a subset of agreeableness, has been shown to be especially important. Therefore, subjective aging and longevity need be considered. Individuals typically have reference points that guide our perception of experienced age Some feel older than the chronological age, and some feel younger, in addition to being an alternative marker of development. Subjective age is theorized to be a possible personal dimension that can be used to explore individual behavior and functioning. Focusing on subjective life expectancy within a biosocial and psychosocial framework, it is found that individuals' ideas of their likely age at death were significantly related to biomedical and genetic factors such as age, health diagnosis, parental longevity, health behaviors such as exercise, smoking, alcohol usage, dieting, and psychosocial factors such as optimism, distress, social connectedness, but not to socio-economic factors such as income and education. The findings show that individuals have the ability to construct an outstanding understanding of personal life expectancy that is largely based on significant predictions or predictors, which are actually proven to be associated with actual life expectancy. Right. For a long time, now it has been also spoken about that in the 5-factor model of personality dimensions are strongly distinguished. We can easily list them. 1. Extroversion with characteristics such as sociability, talkativeness, excitability, assertiveness, and high degree of emotional expressiveness. 2. Neuroticism, expressed in emotional instability, anxiety, and depressive mood, and irritability. 3. Agreeableness, including attributes of trust, altruism, and various forms of pro-social behavior. 4. Openness, shown as imagination and insight in a broad range of interests. And 5. Consciousness or conscientiousness, which includes thoughtfulness, impulse, personal control, and goal-directed behaviors with the awareness to details in a broad context. Among these personality characteristics, conscientiousness is typically found to be the most significant dimension associated with longevity. In addition, conscientiousness is also a predictor of more healthy behaviors and overall physical health. For instance, being able to choose and match items of interest, whether it is clothing or items to prepare one's dinner. An interesting study on the role of conscientiousness for longevity was reported by Friedman. In using data regarding mortality in Thurman's study from the 1920s, they found the conscientiousness in childhood was significantly related to survival decades later. Kern and colleagues also examined conscientiousness measured in young life, as well as later career successes and mortality risk over a 65-year period. They found that personality moderated their success in longevity link and that conscientiousness was the best predictor for survival among the least successful individuals. It was confirmed by the researchers in their analysis of individuals followed for nearly 50 years in the Baltimore longitude study of aging. Interestingly, they found that the association between personality traits and longevity was largely independent from health risk factors like smoking and obesity. In other words, do not despair if you were indulging in smoking or obese. It has been said that along the lines of a lifespan development inquiry, Eaton in 2012 and colleagues proposed a more detailed investigation of personality as a nexus for connecting genetics, environment, and health outcomes, including longevity. Therefore, the general idea is that personality reflects psychological mechanisms that predisposes individuals to engage in various healthy or unhealthy behavior patterns across the lifespan, which in turn can affect the likelihood for later survival. In 2011, a study was conducted to better understand the conscientious and longevity link. Using a 10-year longitude sample, they tested with physical health and cognitive functioning mediated the association in the health and retirement study of aging adults. The other measures included, in addition to conscientiousness, self-reported health conditions and measures of cognitive functioning. Conscientiousness directly predicted greater longevity even when the two mediators were included. They also found cognitive functioning partially mediated the relationship. Although personality is said to be largely remaining stable during the lifespan, certain changes have been linked to longevity. Another study specifically highlighted a psychological aspect of knowing how long one will survive and was conducted by Levy and collaborators. They used data from a sample of, more than 600 individuals aged 50 and older who participated in the Ohio longitude internal study of aging and retirement. Based on a survival analysis, they showed that older adults with more positive self-perceptions of aging, in fact, survived longer, on average more than 7 years, than those with less positive self-perceptions. The finding remained even after controlling covariates, age, gender, socioeconomic status, loneliness, and functional health. Interestingly, the effect was partially mediated by the will to live. Cotta in 2009 examined whether and how self-perceptions of aging change with age and whether such changes are associated with distance from death. Using data from the Berlin aging study, they found that it seemed to be experiences of more favorable change patterns, not only better overall satisfaction with aging and subjective age that contributes to lower mortality hazards. Offspring's optimism about longevity was found to correlate with parental longevity into community dwelling cohort, suggesting that optimism and forecasting may be partly determined by ideas of genetic influences on longevity. Interestingly, such an effect should be evaluated against evidence of heritability. Estimates of longevity, which have been found to be as low as about 25%. It has been also found in 2014 that the beneficial effects on survival among individuals who claimed that they had a purposeful perspective on their life. Using data from the longitude and midlife in the US study, they showed that purposeful individuals, independent of age, lived longer than their counterparts during a 14-year observation period after the baseline assessment, even after controlling for other markers of psychological and affective well-being. The authors have determined that a purpose in life might buffer against mortality risk across the adult years. Now let us consider that subjective well-being that refers to how individuals evaluate their own life, including the emotional experiences of pleasure and what is considered to be good life. More broadly speaking, subjective well-being is commonly measured as positive effect, which refers to experience of pleasant emotion and mood, such as happiness and excitement, and low negative effect, including the experiences of unpleasant, distressing emotions and moods, such as sadness and anger. The balance between positive and negative effect has been used as an overall measure of subjective well-being. We are shown that life satisfaction is a construct closely connected to the affective dimensions of subjective well-being, although it relates more to the cognitive evaluation of one's own life at present and how it has unfolded over previous years in terms of an overall satisfaction, i.e., in most ways, my life is close to my ideal and I'm satisfied with my life. I'm happy with things I do or capable of doing. Here is yet another question. How do you rate your life? Although we all tend to strive for well-being over the entire lifespan, the socio-economical selectivity theory proposed by Carstensen in 2006 assumes that the types of emotional states that are viewed as the most positive and preferable tend to change with age and the accompanying sense of a more restricted future time horizon. To feel satisfied with one's own life becomes more of a priority than other goals that might have been viewed as important earlier in life. According to the theory, motivational shift also influences cognitive processing, and that older adults tend to show a preference for positive or negative information. This positivity effect may also be reflected in a preference for present emotion-related states or knowledge-related goals. The outcome measure was the longevity evaluated by risks of all causes, natural causes, and unnatural causes of mortality. They found that higher well-being predicted a lower risk of all causes and natural cause mortality even after an initial control for age, gender, marital status, social contacts, and affiliation, baseline health variables in terms of self-reports of chronic medical conditions and functional disabilities, and subjective health. With the exception of negative effect, they concluded that all other variables for subjective well-being significantly predicted longevity. What about the subjective health and longevity? Subjective health, how we perceive our own health status, is likely to also affect how we define our subjective age. There are two different factors that both have a relationship to longevity. According to Jaila in 2009, subjective health or self-rated health lies at the crossroads of culture and biology, requiring collaborative and multidisciplinary efforts between several disciplines. She proposed a model of self-rated health, which represents the global statement about multiple aspects of health, and in which both subjective and objective dimensions need to be observed and studied. Several studies have demonstrated that a global self-rating of health is indicative of subsequent survival. As suggested by several researchers, self-rated health is a more inclusive measure than most other health indicators, typically employed in studies of unselected samples. It is also emphasized that even if self-rated health is a significant predictor of mortality, it cannot be given a role as a determinant for the underlying biological devitalization that precedes death. Experienced overall health may only be a condensed evaluation of bodily conditions involved in vital biological processes. Alas, the predictive power of self-rated health becomes weaker, and studies for controlling and objectively measured health, especially among individuals who are more knowledgeable and better informed about their own health status. We discover that there is also an association between self-rated health and other dimensions of well-being. In a sample of individuals aged 80 and older, Berg in 2006 showed that there is a significant association with life satisfaction. In a follow-up study, they examined the association with 25 common medical diagnoses in old age and found that only stroke, sleep problems, and incontinence were significantly associated with life satisfaction. Associations between self-rated health, various objective measures of health and longevity are far from perfect, as they specifically address the question, for whom does poor self-rated health not predict mortality? Good question. Using the data from a study of individuals who were 75 and older in Israel, they found that engagement in meaningful activities was an indicator of better health and longer survival, even among those with poor self-rated health. How would you rate your own overall health? The ability to establish and maintain a social network is partly a reflection of an individual's psychological competency, as connectedness and social embeddedness means that we are mutually attractive for social relationships. We need to read in the related literature, human lifespan is ultimately determined by biological criteria for survival. Let us then consider it as the unique feature of humankind. However, it is the capability to redesign the environment and to adapt one's own behavior to reduce risks for morbidity, disability, and mortality by increasing longevity. The outcome of such efforts are seen in the dramatically reduced infant mortality and among adults in the, shall we say, rectangularized survival curve, if it makes sense. And extended life expectancy. Take note also that an older age demonstrates often the boundaries for life are not entirely fixed and deterministic. Longevity, considered between nations and reflects overall living conditions in various regions of the world. In a review, it was estimated that the majority of babies born in the year 2000 in countries with already long life expectancies are likely to celebrate their 100th birthday easily. We also discover that compared with earlier birth cohorts, later ones tend to show better overall health and cognition at the same chronological age. A possible explanation to this is the influences from an extended education and lifelong intellectual stimulation that have made us better adapted to help with the challenges and environmental change. In the everyday context, general knowledge and specific cognitive abilities are crucial for adjustment and engagement with the life in a sense, as well as for specific health-related behaviors. Personality dimensions and the way we perceive ourselves as aging individuals are also important driving forces for the adjustment. Stochastic variables, however, tend to become more important with age in determining subsequent longevity, independent psychological characteristics, and functioning. Research and studies of mature age survivors therefore tend to find it difficult to identify psychological characteristics that may have contributed to longevity. To better comprehend the prerequisites for longevity, we will need to adopt a life course or lifespan development perspective. Although psychological variables are associated with differences in average survival, certain interaction patterns among these variables are also very likely. In various constellations, they are capable to affect lifestyles and various health-related behaviors, which in turn affect the likelihood for maintenance of vitality, health, and survival, and, yes, longevity. According to this model, we are being informed that there might be more direct relationships between individual psychological characteristics and longevity, but again, strongly emphasizing that lifestyle and health-related behavior mediate these influences, and therefore better understanding of the prerequisites for longevity require that we adopt a general life course and lifespan development perspective. After all the study and research, we discover that to ensure a healthy legitimacy in future generations, we need to consider interactions among multiple factors related to both cohort and generations, including those living in socio-economic conditions, and also the interplay between genetic and environmental influences, which in concert foster psychological functioning and characteristics, as well as certain lifestyle and health-related behaviors. We will certainly talk a little more about this issue of great importance. Now I wish you a smiling and long-lasting time. Keep smiling. Be happy. We will meet you again by the next episodes. Thank you.